When my son told me I wasn't welcome in his home for Christmas, something inside me stopped being small. I smiled, drove away, and for the first time in years, I stopped paying. If you like stories that scratch at a quiet, satisfying kind of justice, hit subscribe. This one's for anyone who's ever been taken for granted. I should have smelled it the night they told me. Not the vanilla candles or the roast. Those things are obvious. But the way the room seemed to shrink around me, like I'd been compressed to fit inside a frame they'd already decided to hang. I could make my famous turkey this year, I said, settling deeper into Michael's leather couch. The cuff of his jacket was a little too new, the leather too smooth, the cushion too trained to hold things lighter than grief. Isabella's Christmas tree glittered like a foreign country. She smiled, polite and distant, the kind of smile you put on when you're making an announcement you know will hurt somebody else. "Dad," Michael said. He fiddled with the napkin on his knee, as if to avoid the straight line of my eyes. "Isabella's parents are coming. They'd prefer you not be here." I remember how the words landed. Not as an argument, not as a plea, but as an arrangement of convenience. Their preferences, his shrinking voice. I looked around at the house. The curtains I'd bought when my wife had wanted a little privacy. The hardwood floors I'd financed with a second mortgage. The crown molding that had maxed out my cards. Every inch of that living room was a ledger of my choices, my sacrifices. Each one had been repaid with a glance that made me feel like hired help. "Prefer," I repeated. "What way is that?" "It's just, they're traditions," Michael said. "The way people say it's nothing when it's everything." Isabella, from the kitchen, called out something about timing and plans. I stood up before I could think better of it. My hand found the doorknob. "Tell them." Then, I said without turning, "Feliz Navidad." The December air outside was sharp enough to wake me. I sat in my truck for a long time, engine off, watching other people's lights wink and promise. The numbers started to crawl across the black window of my mind like a slot machine. $2,800 a month for 5 years. The down payment, the granite countertops, the KitchenAid that had been used twice. $143,400, $168,000. The totals tasted like a litany. It wasn't just money. It was years of tiny erasures, dinners skipped, new clothes I couldn't buy, the quiet of a house without laughter because laughter had been exported to someone else's address. I drove home and let the night swallow me. Maria's photo on the mantel watched me like a compass, steady, unshocked. I answered the phone when Isabella called. Eventually, the way you pick up after a small injury you know won't be serious. Her tone was syrupy, practiced. "Dennis," she said. "There was a small misunderstanding with Michael. You know how my parents are. They have very specific expectations." You could almost hear the shopping bags rustling in the background. You could hear the exact choice of words someone like her would pick when trimming away the dirt on another person's life until only what shines remained. That day, I stopped pretending the bleeding would stop on its own. I pulled out the manila folder I'd kept in the back of the drawer. Mortgage papers, canceled checks, automatic transfers. I called the bank and did one of those small, enormous things. I canceled the automatic transfer that had turned me into a walking ATM. Effective immediately, I told the customer service woman. Her voice had none of the pity I'd been braced for. She typed, and the number disappeared. Walked into the rest of my life like someone leaving a bad movie halfway through. Lighter, but not yet free. I lit the pile of papers I'd been carrying in secret and watched the embers eat 10 years of martyrdom. The heat on my face felt like the first real warmth I'd known since Maria died. But freedom comes with a ripple. It's loud, and people hear it. Isabella expected an obedient chauffeur, a man who vanished when not needed. So she called on me the next morning, breathless, expecting me at the airport. Her voice was thin with entitlement. "Dad, pick up my parents from flight 447, Carousel 3. We're something decent, okay?" I almost laughed. The gall. To exclude me from dinner, then summon me to be the help. So I didn't go. I made grilled cheese and ate it like a king, slowly, and I drank my tea while the house was quiet. I let the calls pile into a buzzing storm on my phone, and then, one by one, I turned them off. I felt the delicious, ridiculous luxury of not being anyone's emergency plan. An hour later, someone pounded on my door like they wanted to knock it off its hinges. Cody Jenkins, the husband of Isabella's mother, his face bunched into a map of rage, shoved his way into my living room. Catherine followed like a thundercloud. Isabella was wrung out, mascara smudged, outrage lacquered onto her perfect posture. "You left my parents at the airport," Cody roared. "You abandoned them in a storm." "There was no storm," I said. The words felt calm as water. "You told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas." The way they charged, the threats whispered like old money maledictions. I know people. Told me what they thought I was, an irritant, a distraction, someone whose dignity was optional. They filed out, vowing consequences, and I watched them go with a clarity I hadn't had the night at Michael's. If you want a war, don't be surprised when someone who's been burned learns how to strike. What Cody didn't anticipate was reputation's currency, that the very city that enjoys certain kinds of gossip trades both ways. 3 days later, my face stared back at me from page 3 under a headline that made me look like a villain who'd abandoned the elderly in a blizzard that never existed. A story planted by a banking contact, a hatchet job, tidy and cruel. And there it was, me, the monster. I'd never been what they called me, but they'd painted me that way. So I did what any man with 2 hands and a life spent building things from nothing does. I documented. Bank statements, canceled transfers, receipts for down payments, photos of the granite countertops and the artisan couch. Isabella's social media, full of check-ins and late-night shopping sprees on months I'd covered the utilities. I printed everything, arranged it into 12 neat packets, one for each guest at their Christmas dinner. Christmas Eve, I parked across the street and walked into the house that glittered like a set for a life I'd funded. Friends and neighbors chattered under the scent of roast and pine. I walked in with my briefcase and a calm like a judge who'd seen the tape. Guests turned and the sound of their holiday conversations cut off like a stage light. Isabella's glass froze halfway to her mouth. Cody's face folded in confusion. Michael went pale. "Good evening," I said.
I think your guests deserve to know who actually paid for this dinner, this house, this lifestyle.
You could feel the air condense as pages were turned. Bank statements glared under the glow of chandeliers. The faces around the table shifted, curiosity first, then unease, then that delicious, vindicating sort of outrage you can't manufacture. The woman with the pearls, the one who always nodded at charity galas, looked at Cody and said one word: outrageous. Isabella tried to spin it into family drama, but when you hand friends evidence and let the math do the talking, some narratives fold under their own weight. The article that had painted me as mad looked worse than a lie in the presence of receipts. Cody's web of favors, the planted headline, all of it came unmoored. That night, I left not as a defeated man, but as someone who'd finally been heard. I had a new warmth in my chest, not from whiskey or anger, but from the knowledge that I hadn't been invisible after all. Time naturally moved. So did consequences. Foreclosure letters arrived months later to Michael's house. Paperwork that came with legal weight and the kind of irony that tastes like justice. He knocked on my door the way a man goes to a coin machine when he's run out of quarters, desperate and resigned. "Dad, we need help," he said. He looked older, thinner, the color of somebody who'd been burning things to stay warm. He wanted the old arrangement. He wanted me to go back to being the quiet drain on my own life, so he could keep a polished table. I looked at him and felt sorrow and a tempered love. "You gave me away," I told him, because it was true. He cried, the kind of quiet, small sound men make when they realize what they chose. Forgiveness came easily that night. Resurrection was a different ledger. I forgave him, and I told him, "If you want me, rebuild. Show me you deserve to be part of my life." Real family doesn't ask for prove your worth. It gives respect. He left that night with a different weight on his shoulders. I watched him go and poured myself a glass of whiskey like a toast to something that felt like survival. What people always miss about revenge stories is how small and human they really are. This wasn't about breaking people. It wasn't about gloating. It was about setting a limit, about taking back what dignity I had left. The real triumph was quieter, being able to buy a new set of tires without an anxiety attack, to fix the porch light that had been an ironic beacon, to invite Rosa and her family for Sunday dinner and have people who wanted me there. There were ripples. Cody and Catherine found their reputations dinged in pockets of town that mattered to them. Friends drifted away when testimony didn't match the rumors. Isabella's social feed grew quieter. Michael learned to sweep up his own mess. And me? I learned that generosity is a gift to be given, but boundaries are ballast. There's a difference between giving until it's all gone and giving with your eyes open. I spent the money I'd reclaimed on the things that stitch a life together. A roof repair, a doctor's visit I delayed, a small trip to see an old friend. I put the rest into a modest account for those little emergencies that were mine now, not a permanent bail bond for someone else's choices. Months later, at a backyard Easter dinner with Rosa and her children, Michael came over. He looked different, steadier. He sat, helped with the grill, joked. He didn't ask for money. He asked for advice about a job interview. That was respect. That was what I'd been hoping for all those years. When he left that afternoon, I walked to the gate and watched him go down the street. I felt something like contentment, but better, clarity. The life I'd built for myself in the shadow of other people's expectations had finally been reclaimed. Maria's photograph on the mantel had a new neighbor, a snapshot of me with Rosa, laughing. The frame was modest. The memory was ferocious. If there's a moral here, it isn't teach them a lesson. It's smaller and sharper. Know your own value. Don't finance someone else's script and then let them write you out of the story when it suits them. If you give, give from joy. If you stop, do it because you deserve to stop. Christmas came the next year, and I made my turkey. The table was full of people who'd earned their seats, not bought them with borrowed credit. Michael texted a picture of his own table, a smaller place, a different kind of light. In the caption he wrote, simply, learning. That's all you can ask sometimes. Learning, and the quiet work of rebuilding. I poured myself a dram of whiskey and raised the glass to Maria's photograph. Merry Christmas to me, I said softly, and meant it. If you enjoyed this one, like the video and subscribe for more stories of quiet payback and reclaimed dignity. Tell me in the comments, would you have done the same? Would you have shown up at their dinner or walked away? Click the box on the left for the next story. Thanks for listening.